of food dropping from its mouth as it mewed. With that soft sound, the comfortable kitchen suddenly shattered into large, jagged pieces, hurling Hunter away from the cat, the warm house, and the Beltane night into cold and darkness. He saw far away a glaring light, heard voices chanting in unison. In the middle of the light stood an impossibly tall man with a hard face and cold, dark eyes. He knew the man, had last seen him 700 years ago in a battle in Scotland. In front of the man stood a woman with blue robes, wearing a garland of flowers in her dark hair. She was chanting, chanting, chanting. Hunter started to say, "What the f—?" when the world splintered again, and he felt himself spinning and twisting uncontrollably through darkness. He landed on something hard, the wind knocked out of him. A warm, ocean-scented breeze wafted across his body. Then someone with scalding hot breath and a face full of fur kissed him on the lips. Lita Stowe awoke in the dawn light. The electronic clock on her bedside table told her it was a half hour before the alarm would go off. From the kitchen, she heard the slow drip of the faucet that never shut off right. But other than that, her house held silence. She lay still, stretching her witch senses to decide what had awakened her. Outside, she heard the usual rush of wind in palm trees and the crash of breakers on the beach, the tide at its height. No throb of a helicopter or a motorboat, not even her animals making noises in the night. But every sense she possessed told her the wards around her island had just been breached. In the front of her mind were the threats from the animal Collector, from whom Mukasa, the African lion in her largest enclosure, had been rescued. Diego Valdez, head of a Mexican drug cartel, had been incensed when an animal rescue organization had liberated the abused Mukasa, and he'd vowed to get his lion back, by force if necessary. This little island of rock and beach, though technically belonging to California, lay very near the waters of Mexico. Lita lifted the tranquilizer gun she kept next to the bed and opened the box in the bedside drawer to load it. Tranquilizer darts worked equally well on human beings as on a hurt big cat in a frenzy. The human would be out long enough for her to call the Coast Guard or the Drug Enforcement Administration, who patrolled these waters. She pulled on a t-shirt and khaki shorts and slipped on her sneakers. Her enclosures right now held only two animals, the lion Mukasa and a Japanese bear called Taro. Taro was waiting until facilities were ready for him in Hokkaido, where he'd be transferred back into the wild. Mukasa's fate was yet to be determined. Valdez's threats aside, both animals were valuable to unscrupulous collectors who would sell them for untold sums, dead or alive. Lita's wards were strong, her air magic enhanced by the trade winds that blew continuously across the island. No one should have been able to breach them. She walked onto the veranda with the rifle in one hand and her radio in the other. The radio was better than a cell phone out here because she knew there would always be a Coast Guard dispatcher on the other end. She hung the radio on her belt, then reached behind the door and snapped the switches that flooded the compound with light. Taro reared up against the 12-foot chain-link fence of his large enclosure, grunting a greeting. He was a curious animal, liking to watch everything she did, and Lita felt a measure of relief that he seemed unhurt and unbothered. Mukasa, on the other hand, did not appear. Lita went down the wooden steps and walked quietly across the sand. She saw nothing out of the ordinary, no boat rock next to her own sailboat. The helipad and airstrips down the beach were empty, and no lights glittered on a craft out to sea. She heard nothing but the wind in the palms, the roar of waves sliding up the beach. Something moved in Mukasa's enclosure beyond the pool of light, something upright and human that skulked in the shadows. Lita lost her temper. The threats of the drug lord enraged rather than frightened her, especially after what Valdez had done to the noble Mukasa. She drew power from the air around her and traced a rune of protection with the toe of her sneaker. Pouring her magic into it, a faint yellow glow danced from the rune, the color of air magic. She cocked the rifle and aimed it at the gate. "I see you in there. Come out, now!" Mukasa walked into the circle of